This video was inspired by an idea commented by UltraGamer63. Completion rewards. When executed properly, they're nifty little bonuses that effectively incentivize players to complete the game. To what degree? Well, it varies anywhere from simply completing the game's story, to obtaining every single collectible, predominantly ones that are tinted gold, to even pushing players to shoot for the demanding yet ultimately rewarding 100% completion save file. Most of the time, the rewards in question are most certainly worth the hassle, but there's a key word to emphasize here. Most. See, in some instances, after wasting precious hours of achieving that coveted 100% save, you'll be bestowed with a reward that's either neat but not worth the prolonged effort that it took to unlock it, or, alternatively, absolutely abysmal. Take, for example, Super Paper Mario. This game introduced the flip mechanic, which allows Mario to shift dimensions and navigate ostensibly impossible paths with the power of 3D. The only downside to using this mechanic is that you're bound by a time limit that'll damage you if you don't flip back into the second dimension. However, you can unlock an ability that allows you to keep the meter infinitely charged. After you make it the flop side, which is unlocked after making it to chapter 5 out of 8. And after making it the flop side, you then have to complete the pit of 100 trials, which, if you couldn't guess, hits you against 100 rooms of enemies that you'll have to defeat without dying. Once you've finally completed the pit of 100 trials, you're given the Mario card, which allows Mario to remain flipped for as long as he wants. But at this point, you've probably already discovered the majority of what the game has to offer, rendering this reward as ultimately useless. This is what I'm talking about today. Completion rewards that are either underwhelming given the conditions that you just had to endure, or just flat out horrendous. Enjoy!
Here we go!
Alright, so let's kick things off with some Super Mario 64. I think you all know by now just how much of a pivotal title Super Mario 64 was to the video game industry. It was one of the first true collectathon 3D platformers and essentially set a benchmark for the genre, and it helped propel platformers back into the spotlight for the remainder of the 90s. Despite the fact that it was a first of its kind, this game was still jam-packed with content from beginning to end. 15 highly explorable levels, each with 7 tasks to complete, 120 power stars, 15 of which come from uncovering secrets throughout the castle, power-ups, thousands of coins to collect, you get the idea. In other words, this game will most definitely keep you occupied. However, you might be instilled with the false belief that the fruits of your labor are going to pay off in the end, because, spoiler alert, the ultimate reward for collecting every star in the game is shockingly underwhelming given the requirements. I know I'm gonna catch some flack for this because it truly is one of the most iconic completion rewards in video game history, but besides the admittedly charming and wholesome cameo, there's not really much else to it. So after collecting all 120 stars, which requires beating the game, completing every task in every level, and collecting the aforementioned 15 hidden stars, you'll find this previously inaccessible cannon that, with proper precision, can be used to launch Mario to the top of the castle. But if you were like me, chances are you flattened Mario's face like an Italian pancake more times than you could count. So much so that instead of doing this, you'd be flipping it upside down and tossing Mario's remains into the nearby dumpster. Successfully land on top of the castle, however, and you'll discover a familiar and amicable face. Yoshi, the trusty dinosaur companion that, despite years of being relegated to sacrificial jump pad status, is unimaginably excited at the sight of Mario. Poor Yoshi, I mean damn, I knew he was loyal, but I didn't think he'd be bordering into Stockholm Syndrome territory. Chat with Yoshi and he'll relay a message to you from the development team of Super Mario 64, because apparently when he's not pulling a Wesley Snipes on his taxes, he's the official errand boy of Nintendo and probably the one issuing all of those DMCAs. You know what, Mario? Send Yoshi back into the abyss. However, the message also contains a gift for the player, with part of it stating that this is the end of the game, but not the end of the fun. We want you to keep on playing, so we have a little something for you. We hope that you like it. Enjoy! Ooh, what could it be? Can we mount Yoshi? Does Mario get a new ability? Is it a new world? Is Luigi playable? Yoshi, you got any room down there? Yes, after essentially finishing the game to 100% completion, Yoshi bestows you with 100 lives, and at face value, this doesn't sound awful. Disappointing, but nothing abysmal. Here's the problem. Super Mario 64, while not exactly a cakewalk, is far from the most demanding game, even by the standards of the Nintendo 64's library. Even if you do manage to waste every single one of your lives, you're booted back to the title screen and can simply load your most recent save file. So the risk of running out of lives is practically non-existent. And as the cherry on top of this shit son Sunday, you're rewarded with these 100 extra lives after you've completed every single task that the game has to offer. Every boss fight, every star, every secret, you name it. There's not a single practical use case for the bonus lives. And just to pour salt on the wound, before you can unleash your pent-up rage on Yoshi for his war crimes and your underwhelming reward, he does the job for you and chooses to vault off of the roof and go about his business, never to be seen again. Emphasis on the never to be seen again aspect because beyond this point, Yoshi cannot be found on the roof of the castle, meaning that his cameo and the 100 extra lives are one-time bonuses. If you impulsively decide to save after completing a level, guess what? You have to earn every single star all over again if you want to see Yoshi give you a bonus and then freefall into the depths of the unknown. Thankfully, Yoshi had a far more prominent role in the DS remake, where, in a fun twist, he actually becomes the first playable character, with Mario, Luigi, and Wario unlocked later on.
What are you doing out here, Petruccio? You should be in bed.
I want those feathers.
What for?
It's a secret.
You know, I fondly remember a period of time where the Assassin's Creed series was a well-respected and, dare I say, a revered series of games that I would argue helped solidify the open-world genre as a dominant force in the industry. It also almost single-handedly catapulted Ubisoft into the spotlight, for better or worse, depending on who you ask. That being said, there was a bit of a golden era for Assassin's Creed, starting with the second game and ending with Black Flag. My god, remember when Assassin's Creed 3 was considered the low point of the series? Yeah, those were the days. That being said, the game we're focusing on today is Assassin's Creed 2, one of my personal favorites in the series, right next to Brotherhood and Black Flag. In the early hours of Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio uses his traversal skills to grab a handful of feathers for his little brother, Petruccio. However, the following day, Ezio's family is hanged after being falsely accused of treason, Petruccio included. Following this inconveniently timed event, Ezio vows to collect the remaining feathers across Italy as a form of tribute to his ill-fated brother, and exact revenge against his family's killers. If you want to fully pay respect to Petruccio's passing, you'll have to comb through Italy and collect all 100 feathers in order to unlock the familial prize, the Auditore Cape, but more on that in a little bit. Now, I'll admit the incentive for the player to collect all 100 feathers is surprisingly somber and bittersweet, but good lord, collecting all of them is such a cumbersome and monotonous ordeal if you don't know what you're doing. They don't appear on the map, and there's no method that allows you to visibly see them on said map, so you're practically confined to using guides and online walkthroughs if you don't want to waste time rigorously exploring the map for feathers. Collect all 100 feathers and you'll earn the Auditore Cape, which serves as a heartwarming reminder of your efforts to collect feathers for Petruccio. However, that's not quite all that there is to this cape, because it also comes equipped with a gameplay modifier of sorts. Don the Auditore Cape and Ezio's notoriety meter will skyrocket to 100% regardless of what part of the map he's in. For those who don't know, the notoriety meter in Assassin's Creed 2 is sort of like an amalgamation of the honor system from the Red Dead series and the wanted levels from the GTA series. Perform crimes such as blatantly obvious assassinations in front of guards and the meter goes up, while doing things such as strategically removing your wanted posters will lower your notoriety. But with the Auditore Cape, almost every component of the notoriety system is nullified because, as I mentioned earlier, it immediately flags Ezio as a notorious menace of society. But I gotta ask, what's the point? I mean, I guess from a narrative perspective it makes sense, given that the Auditores are erroneously labeled as criminals in the public eye and executed as a result. In the modern day we call that cancel culture, minus the hanging. But really though, what's the point of this? It's admittedly a little entertaining dashing around town with a target on your back, or in this case, a cape on your robes, but it's kind of counterintuitive to be donning this thing because sometimes the perpetual chaos just becomes a flat-out nuisance instead of a fun self-imposed challenge. Interestingly, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood would address this in a way by allowing you to unlock the Auditore Cape once more, but this time it has the inverse effect as it allows you to continuously keep your notoriety at 0 no matter what, and all you have to do in order to unlock it is rebuild the entire city of Rome. Wait, what? Alright guys, you know what time it is, it's the community entry! So I asked you guys for a suggestion for an entry in the video, and I was bestowed with quite the plethora of choices. For example, I was reminded by numerous commenters about the laughably useless Hestu's gift from Breath of the Wild, which is quite literally a golden pile of shit that's given to you after collecting all 900 Korok seeds. Yes, 900. The only added benefit that this golden turd provides is the ability to see Hestu's dance whenever you want. And in Tears of the Kingdom, the reward for finding all 1000 Koroks is practically the exact same thing, minus an additional swirl. Others informed me about the printable certificate that you can unlock in the early Pokemon games after filling your Pokédex with every single Pokemon. The only added bonus that this gave me was a thorough scolding and silence at the dinner table after I hung it on the wall and left my college degree in a drawer. But it doesn't matter anyway because they both left me sleep deprived by the time I got them. And I was even told about the humorous yet ultimately unfulfilling completion reward found in Super Mario Wonder, which is a badge that swaps out the excellent sound design in favor of lower quality ones that are made from from the voices of the game developers. I'm sorry, Wario guy, I was this close to including it. Please don't break into my house, eat all of my garlic, and break Wend until I fucking die. However, Alex Walker 5716 reminded me of a notably underwhelming completion reward in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, the Stud Fountain. So, Alex Walker 5716, this one's for you. Thank you for the suggestion. So, in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and by extension, just about every Traveler's Tales LEGO game for that matter, there's one thing that you're going to be doing on a rather consistent basis, either intentionally or not: collecting studs. Studs are the currency of the LEGO games and have remained so since the very first Traveler's Tales LEGO game, LEGO Star Wars the video game. You'll find them in levels, in the hubs, and open worlds, and if your room is unkempt enough, you might find them puncturing your feet after it's too late. They're also used to purchase characters, vehicles, and even numerous cheat codes that can drastically alter certain properties of the game. Even your stud intake, but more on that a little bit later. See, despite the abundance of studs that you can find in the game, being able to buy everything can be quite the tall order, given just how expensive certain unlockables are. Oh, what's that? You want to play as Yoda after he croaked? That'll be 7 figures, please, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. So obviously, you might need a little financial assistance, and you're in luck, because this game has a solution. You'll be able to construct the stud fountain outside of Mos Eisley Cantina. This fountain is pretty self-explanatory, as it showers the area with a limitless supply of studs, ensuring that you'll have no trouble unlocking everything in the game. However, there's a catch. In order to actually unlock the stud fountain, you have to unlock all 160 gold bricks that you can find throughout the game. And I know what you're thinking, at least you'll be able to revel in your hard-earned success by gaining a ludicrous amount of studs. Well, there's another problem with that, because you're also able to obtain extras that allow you to modify the game, the most practical of which comes in the form of the stud multipliers. Stud multipliers increase the amount of studs that you can obtain depending on which multipliers you have enabled. You have times 2, times 4, times 6, times 8, and times 10. So already, studs become an effortless currency to obtain given just how much the multipliers amplify your stud intake. But what makes them even more absurdly useful is the fact that you can stack each individual multiplier with one another, meaning that you can multiply your stud intake by 3,840. In other words, you'll be reaching the 100 million studs territory in a shockingly brief amount of time. So in other words, this stud fountain already didn't serve a purpose to begin with, given that you can only get this thing after finding all 160 gold bricks, but the gratifying feeling of acquiring a large sum of studs is also completely non-existent, because at this point, you've more than likely already acquired all of the stud multipliers. What's even worse is that, for some peculiar reason, LEGO games in particular have consistently been plagued with disappointing completion rewards. LEGO Batman 2 gives you Supergirl after completing the game 100%, but she functions in the exact same fashion as Superman, and there's nothing else to do when you unlock her. In LEGO Indiana Jones, the university that serves as the game's hub world will begin to rain a massive bounty of studs after completing 100% of the game. Are you kidding me? Hell, even the most recent game, the Skywalker Saga, isn't safe from this, because you're able to unlock a fountain that functions similarly to the one in the Complete Saga. But aside from the admittedly pleasant fan service, it's even less convenient because it's only accessible after 100% completion. What a shame. Oh, Fallout, I've already sung your praises and criticized your blunders so frequently on this channel that it feels like couples therapy. But today, the therapist is on my side, so listen up, you little shit. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, this idea was inspired by a comment that was left on a previous video of mine from the user UltraGamer63. One of his suggestions was the hint book from Fallout 2, and I've gotta say, it's quite the perfect entry for this list. So, long before the Fallout series adopted a first-person perspective and an emphasis on action RPG elements, courtesy of Bethesda of course, it was a turn-based RPG with an isometric view developed by Interplay Productions, and embraced a comparatively dark tone when placed alongside the modern entries. Now, when Fallout 2 was released, it was largely viewed as a worthy successor to the previous game, albeit with a more consistent quantity of bugs and glitches, which for some reviewers partially hindered the game's true potential. Oh, how prophetic. Now, it should also be noted that the early hours of Fallout 2 can be, quite frankly, a major pain in the ass. Right from the get-go, you'll have to endure the Temple of Trials, a frustrating tutorial-esque section of the game that, granted, on subsequent playthroughs, is relatively straightforward if you know what you're doing, but for a first-time player, yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. But after overcoming that hurdle, well, this game doesn't pull any punches. In fact, it'll probably piss you off so much that you won't be holding back either. I'd argue that it takes about a good 30 to 40% of the main campaign for the odds to begin tilting in your favor, and even then, it's far from a walk in the park. If anything, it's more so a panic-induced sprint through a desolate wasteland while the floaters start squirming after you. So after enduring the harsh and unforgiving world of Fallout 2, and ending the game by destroying the Enclave oil rig, Father Tully will award you with the Hint Book, one of 7 skill books in the game and undoubtedly the best of the bunch. So what does it do? Well, upon usage, it grants the player 10,000 XP and increases all skills to 300%. And if that wasn't a good enough selling point, before an update, you could allegedly use this thing an infinite number of times so that you could endlessly gain ludicrous amounts of XP. Now, I know what you're thinking. C-Shift, are you high out of your mind? And to that I say, no, not yet, but Myron over here's got me reconsidering my intoxication levels. But the reason as to why this is, in my opinion, an underwhelming completion reward is because at this point, you've had everything in the kitchen sink thrown at you. You've dealt with enough sleazeballs, abominations, and wildly overpowered enemies to know how to acclimate to perilous situations. And at this point, the difficulty has now devolved from overwhelmingly arduous to shockingly effortless. So riddle me this, bat dick. Why in the fresh hell would a glorified cheat menu come in handy after beating the main campaign? I mean, look, I get it. It can be mindless fun one-shotting every person you come across, given that your stats are absurdly powerful, but you have to understand that there's not really much to do in Fallout 2 after you beat the main campaign. This was before Bethesda injected its game design principle of cramming as much side content into the game as possible. Mind you, this game is roughly half a gigabyte in size. And the only true post-game content is the freedom to explore the wasteland on your own volition and see what the nearby residents have to say about your heroic efforts. But besides that, there's not really much. Now, if you'll excuse me, Myron over here is about to converse with me about his creation process behind his drugs. I gotta save my son, Mama Murphy's offering some help in exchange for Jet, and I gotta get my fix too, damn it. Lay it on me, Myron.
2 words. Brahmin shit.
Come again.
Brahmin shit.
Well, you gotta start somewhere. Okay, so C-Shift Lore Dump Episode 2. Ghostbusters is one of my favorite films of all time. It's hilarious, wildly creative, and exhibits a damn near perfect coalescence of science fiction, horror, and comedy. I watched this film countless times as a young chap, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have given the abundance of adult-oriented humor, but damn it, I was there for the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man and the stream crossing. I tried to do the latter in public urinals, and all of a sudden, I'm the one charged with indecent exposure. So I love Ghostbusters, I love video games, and if you let the two converge, then it should be a surefire hit, right? Well, yeah, in 2009, the world was blessed with the genuinely excellent Ghostbusters the video game, one that I would argue is one of the best licensed games ever made. But we're not talking about that today. This is Ghostbusters for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, I really don't like this game. Much like plenty of other licensed games of its time, it is a needlessly convoluted, frustrating, and soulless cash grab that fails to capture the spirit of the source material that it's based on. Given that this game was allegedly cobbled together in a mere 6 weeks, at least on certain versions of the game, it should be no surprise that at least a few errors were inevitably going to slip through the cracks. And oh boy, errors this game certainly has. For example, there's a glitch that allows you to skip the final boss by getting hit twice in this particular spot on the staircase, which for some absurd reason also gives you a damn near limitless supply of lives, and allows you to essentially breeze past the ghosts and defeat Gozer without experiencing most of what the game has to offer. For me though, that's a win. This game sucks. But the most laughable and infamous error that the game has to offer is this game's completion bonus, which is given to you after beating the final boss, a congratulatory win screen. Now granted, it wasn't uncommon for a game to reward you by simply eulogizing you after winning, but the reason why I chose Ghostbusters for the NES in particular is because of its egregious grammatical errors. Congratulations, you have completed a great game, improved the justice of our culture. What the fuck does this even mean? So yeah, that should show you just how little effort was put into this absolute abomination of a video game. You think Yoshi had it bad before when he dove into the pit? Just imagine how much he's gonna suffer when I toss him a TV and NES and this piece of shit while I wave Super Mario Bros. 3 at him from a distance. It became such a comically notorious win screen that when the aforementioned 2009 Ghostbusters video game was released, they poked a bit of fun at it by proudly displaying it on a computer monitor on the firehouse's second floor. It still doesn't change the fact that the NES version is appallingly awful, but I'll respect the acknowledgement. Shadow of the Colossus. Where do I even begin with this game? It was easily one of the most cinematic and ambitious games of its time, and pushed the PlayStation 2 to its absolute breaking point with some of the best visuals that the industry had to offer. Now, you could probably imagine that the most acclaimed aspect of this game was its series of boss battles against the Colossi, each crafted with such jaw-dropping spectacle that it makes you wonder if the developers had a distaste for anyone with a fear of heights or abnormally large entities. Regardless, they're easily the highlights of the game experience, and the developers knew this because after completing Shadow Shadow of the Colossus for the first time, you're able to unlock Time Attack mode. Time Attack mode allows you to replay each of the boss battles with an added layer of difficulty, as well as a generally stringent time limit just to make things even more strenuous. That being said, the reward for partaking in this series of trials is, for the most part, worth it, as you're able to unlock a slew of goodies depending on how many Colossi you defeat in this mode. For example, if you defeat 2 Colossi in this mode, you'll unlock the Whistling Arrow, an arrow that, as the name implies, emits a whistling noise that can be used to distract Colossi. Beating 4 Colossi grants you the Cloak of Force, which increases sword damage, the list goes on. Now, given the extremely practical rewards that I just mentioned, you would think that the subsequent unlockables would only increase in adequacy. In some instances, yeah, you can unlock some seriously handy bonuses, but in others, not so much. If you defeat all 16 Colossi in the Time Attack mode, you get 2 rewards that are extremely antithetical to one another, at least when it comes to practicality. On one hand, you unlock the Flash Arrow, which is used to inflict some pretty sizable damage on Colossi sigils, but on the other hand, you get a brown alternate color for your horse, Aggro. See what I mean? Why in the hell are these 2 unlocked under the exact same condition? Now, let me clarify, this isn't a horse customization feature that you can unlock, it's just a color swap. You had to wait about 13 years until a game had truly extensive horse customization, shriveling testicles included. No, this is just a color palette that doesn't even provide any stat changes or property alterations. And listen, contrary to what you might believe given my previous videos, I actually love the notion of being able to customize a character regardless of the extent. The problem is that you have to essentially beat the game twice in order to do so. However, that's not even the worst part. Why? Well, there's another Time Attack mode, but this time the difficulty is increased even further, and you get even more rewards for defeating the 16 Colossi. And once again, as if it's some sick and twisted practical joke that the developers wanted to push onto players, if you defeat all 16 Colossi for a 3rd time with even more demanding stipulations, you get a genuinely fantastic reward in the form of the Queen's Sword, which one-shots any Colossi sigil with ease, and a laughably pathetic reward, a white skin for Aggro. You mean to tell me that I had to beat the game 3 times in order to get here? You know what? It's fine. It doesn't matter. I've played this game enough. I'm just gonna try out another Team Eco game, and hopefully I'll have some semblance of inner peace by then. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Victory! Hey, Crash, you're in.
Okay, so for the last entry, we're taking a look at a game infamous for its absurdly onerous completion requirements, Crash Bandicoot 4: It's About Time. Serving as the 4th proper entry after the series stayed in limbo for over a decade, It's About Time was a fantastic continuation of the cherished platforming series, after the immensely successful Crash Trilogy and Crash Team Racing remakes. Now, that being said, this game can be quite demanding in many facets, from its unforgiving level design to its downright absurd stipulations for full completion of a level. It should be no surprise then that any player attempting the daunting task of completing the game 100% is going to subject themselves to an experience akin to the 9 circles of hell, lust included. Let me put this into perspective. If you want to 100% just the first level, here are the guidelines that you'll have to follow to a T. You have to break 104 boxes in order to get the box gem, which includes the bonus level, 283 pieces of fruit for all 3 of the Wumpa gems, 3 deaths or less for another gem, and a secret gem that's hidden within the level. Then you'll have to come back and beat the time trials for the time relics, the platinum of which requiring you to beat the level in under a minute. And right when you think you're ready to move on to the next level, guess what, Crash Bandy's cock? You have to do it all over again for the inverted version of the exact same level. In other words, you're looking at 12 gems for each level if you count the regular and the inverted versions. And let me remind you, the example that I just mentioned is only the first level. There are 43 normal levels, 43 inverted levels, and 21 flashback levels. So all in all, you're looking at a grand total of 107 levels that are required for 100% completion. Who pissed off the director of Toys for Bob, and how do I get him to do it again? If this game broke Caddy, I want to see the next game put him in a coma. Now, I'll admit, the costumes that you unlock for Crash and Coco are fairly decent incentives for gaining at least 6 gems in a level, though your mileage may vary. However, these are not what I'm referring to. What I'm talking about is the 100% completion bonus, as well as the 106% completion bonus. After trudging through roughly 100 hours of collecting every gem, destroying every box, and garnering enough costumes to choke a giraffe, what do you get for your prolonged efforts? Well, getting 100% grants you an extended epilogue that, while charming, should have just been included in the base ending. And getting 106% gives you a slight extension of the normal ending by hyping up the return of Uka Uka, a fairly iconic villain in the series. And that's about it. No bonus costumes, no additional character to play as, no secret level, just an extension of an ending cutscene. Sadly, the future of Crash Bandicoot is kind of up in the air given the alleged cancellation of a prospective Crash 5, but I'm holding out some hope for the orange marsupial. But you know what? I could probably use a break from Crash right now now anyway. I mean, I've got to find a game that's a bit more lenient when it comes to its 100% completion conditions. Care for a little Donkey Kong 64, anyone? Are you kidding me?